Sorry. 1 2 1 2. Do it to Shanda? No way.
Better way to balance out.
I noticed.
Oh, yes.
Any bosom got 2 minutes.
Box ndirangu ndovane box ralugaro Zakamera bizafunia garaba chiko bizafunia kune box bizafunia kune box box ndirangu box ndirangu box ndirangu box ndirangu moto uyu ndivire nene azivira nene kazi magro waro ngo iwe waro mbona ngo ndifire umegro
Hello. Mucha. Ayo, ayo. Vaita kuma 112 izonga chitine tweki kunedza pavazokutenda aiwa
Imba panzam. It was quite okay. Nggak akan. Asli. She gave me knowing women.
Apa budi ke shaman? Apa sih budi? Kan tadi apa nak kita? Apa bangunan kita apa?
We may be seated.
Yeah, so.
We may be Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, may I at this point hand over proceedings to the evidence leader, Mrs. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chairman. Unfortunately, we went to delay our program with about 3 minutes. I understand they are still setting up their machines with some problems coming in. So maybe you may bear with us for 2-3 minutes while we finish setting up their Once again, good afternoon, honorable chair and members of the commission. I am advised that our machines are now working properly. I think I will call upon our next witness, Mr. Tendai Biti.
Honorable Chair, I represent Mr. Tendai Biti. My name is Beatrice. He is outside. I don't know whether he's having the problems we've all been having in coming in here. We were being denied access, so I don't know if it's one of those. If I may just say, be allowed to go out and check where he is and then come back in.
now present and is lawyer,
Which language are you comfortable to use?
English.
If you may state out your full names.
Tendai Biti.
Tendai Biti, do you swear that the evidence which you shall lead before this Commission of Enquiry shall be the truth only? If you do so swear, raise your right hand and say, so help me God.
So help me God.
Oath administered, you may take a seat if you want to take a seat.
Mr. Biti, on behalf of the Commission of Enquiry, I would want to thank you for responding to the invitation to come before the inquiry today.
Thank you, and good afternoon to the commissioners.
It is common cause that you are the vice national chairperson of the MDC Alliance.
That is correct.
And you are also the member of parliament for Harare East.
That is correct. That is correct.
And I understand you received the invitation from the commission. And the reason why the commission has called you is that certain evidence was laid before this commission to the effect that before and on the day of the 1st of August, you made certain statements which could have incited the violence. But being a member of, being a lawyer yourself, I believe you understand that this is not a court of law. As such, we are not putting allegations in ways that we do in criminal proceedings. But this is in order to allow you to respond to those allegations that were made. The commission thought it would only be fair and just that you be allowed to respond to the said allegations. And it is in this spirit that we have been called. Would you have anything that you want the commission to know with regard to the allegations?
Thank you, Your Excellency, and members of the Commission. I have indeed received an invitation to appear before this Commission, and that invitation insinuated that certain allegations had been made by those who came to testify before the Commission. I have, Mr. Chairman, through my lawyers of record, Mrs. Mutetwa of Nyambirai Mutetwa and Associates, and also Mr. Chris Mike of Atherson and Cook, all instructed by the Zimbabwean Lawyers for Human Rights. I have requested copies of the transcripts so that I can study and prepare myself fully and see who said what against me or against the organization that I'm a member of, the Movement for Democratic Change. We've made this request on at least 6 occasions, and we have been denied access to the transcripts. So I need to say that I am appearing before this commission, Mr. Chairman, without prejudice. Or to put it differently, under protest, because I've not been fully finished with the transcript, and therefore I'm unable to answer in minute and greater detail the allegations that have been made against me. I'm also appearing in Castle under protest for the bigger and constitutional issue that from where I'm sitting, the real issue about the 1st of August 2018 is who actually gave the order to deploy members of the army. Who actually gave the order to shoot an unarmed civilian population. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm a constitutional lawyer myself. Section 213 is very clear. Section 213 of the Constitution is very clear that only the country's president is responsible for the deployment of troops, and if that is the case, it means, with great respect, that the answer to who deployed is answered. It's answered by Section 213 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. That being the case, Comrade Chairman, that being the case, the very same person who is constitutionally responsible for deploying troops cannot therefore call a commission of inquiry to in fact inquire into his own cause. He can't do that, he's conflicted. And so principles of natural justice would have demanded that another person, other than the person responsible for deployment of troops, appoints the commission. So I respectfully contend that the appointing authority had no legal basis of making the appointment in setting up the commission in terms of the commission's inquiry act, for the simple and good reason that is conflicted by virtue of Section 213. And I know, President, Chairman, that coming from South Africa, you will be familiar with the two judgments on state capture, in which the High Court of South Africa, the Constitutional Court of South Africa, disbarred former President Zuma from appointing a commission on state capture due to the very fact that he and members of his family had been mentioned, and allegations had been mentioned into state capture. He was also disbarred from appointing a commission of inquiry into the use or abuse of funds around the construction of the Nkankla residence, again for the same reasons. So I would submit, Mr. Chairperson, that if we have to follow the strict dictates of natural justice, constitutionalism, and the rule of law, the appointing authority cannot appoint a commission in which he is both judge and jury. My second basis for the objection, or third basis, are the terms of reference. I consider, Comrade Chairman, that the terms of reference are presumptive. I consider that the terms of reference create a conclusion, but that conclusion is one that ought to be the byproduct of this inquiry, of the factual inquiry. So just to read one, I'll just read one term of reference. It says, and this is term of reference B, to identify the actors and their leaders, their motive and strategy employed in the protest. Why is there an assumption that there were leaders in this meeting? Why is there an assumption that there was a motive? Why is there an assumption that there was a strategy? Because term of reference number B presupposes a pre-planned process, the execution and implementation of something that was planned somewhere by individuals. I would have thought, with great respect, that the simple term of reference is just one. Who ordered the troops out of the barrack on the 1st of August? And who actually gave the command to kill an unarmed civilian population? So with great respect, I consider that the terms of reference are flawed. With great respect, Mr. Chairperson, I have a problem with and I say this with great respect to all of you, I have a problem with some of the commissioners. I think that if justice is to be done, and more importantly, if justice is to be seen to be done, and the test of bias in our law is very simple, as well as in South Africa. It is not what is actually happening. It's not whether there's actually bias. It's actually the perception what would be the innocent bystander think of when certain appointments are made. So I would like to submit with great respect that some of the persons sitting on this commission do not inspire confidence, do not inspire the belief that this commission can be neutral. And I say this with great respect. And I need to underline that I'm creating a gap between the objective conduct of the commissioners and the subjective conduct, or rather the subjective perception. Because the test for bias is subjective. What is the perception of the innocent bystander out there? Because justice must not only be done, but it must be seen to be done. In other words, there must be legitimacy in the mind of the public that those who are administering justice, those who are inquiring on matters of fact, are objective, are impartial, and they are neutral. So I have a problem with Commissioner Charity Manyeruke. I think that she is not in dispute that she's a member of the ruling party. It's not in dispute, with great respect, Comrade Chair, that before the 30th election, she appeared in recorded adverts or campaign material for the ruling party, pitching for Mr. Emerson Mnangagwa. So the question is not whether she will be biased. The question is what is the perception of persons outside, and certainly the perception is not correct. And I would have also have thought that in light of the fact that these allegations have been made against her, I would have thought that the decent thing for her as a self-respecting person would be simply to resign so that she doesn't put anyone in the I have a problem too with the barrister from the United Kingdom. I don't know his name, but I presume it's the white people. I've gone through his website, Mr. Chairperson, and his own personal website, as a personal. So he boasts of a strong association with military and military governments. He says on his website that he actually advises military regimes. So I have a problem. Again, I don't know him. And the question is not whether he will actually be biased. The question is, what is the perception out there? What is the objective, so subjective impression created by his presence? I also would like to know the criteria that he was chosen. There are probably over 1 million lawyers in the United Kingdom. Is it that he was chosen purely because of his actual association with the military junta and so forth? So I've got a problem with him, and I don't think that using the test of bias developed in our law in cases such as McGowan versus the Minister of Health, I don't think you will pass the test. I also have a problem with the Mzee, the general from the Republic of Tanzania. Again, the intelligence we have in our party is that he's strongly associated with our vice president. That may be correct or may not be correct, but the fact out there is that what is the perception to the public? I would have thought that what was simply needed were neutral persons, people with, for instance, yourself, Mr. Chairperson, Chief Menyeka Nyonyoko, people with no bone in the fight, but to appoint persons with some kind of parentage to the military government here, I would have a problem with that. So that's my third, objection. So in short, on this score, it is my evidence, my testimony, my view, and my submission that this commission ought not to have been appointed by the appointing authority that appointed, for the reason that I've pointed out above. And secondly, that there are certain things that raise questions, the terms of reference and the appointment of certain commissioners. So I'm giving evidence under protest. The second aspect of my testimony, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'm aware, with great respect, that you are looking at what happened on the 1st of August 2018. But I think that it would be remiss for the Commission to see the 1st of August 2018 in isolation. And I would like to submit, Mr. Chairman, that 2018 does not, 1st August 2018 does not occur in isolation. It is connected to a long, sad, heinous history of violence in this country. And violence that just doesn't start in 1980, but perhaps starts when Zimbabwe as a modern state is founded in 1888 or 1890. And I would like to submit, Mr. Chairman, and testify that the history of Zimbabwe has been a history founded on violence, founded upon a matrix in which those who have the monopoly of the armed wings of the state, namely the military, have used the same to reproduce a political order in Zimbabwe. And that at all material times during the history of our country, force, coercion, and violence has always been used to reproduce and maintain political power in Zimbabwe. Therefore, the 1st of August 2018, if justice is to be done to it, must be connected to events that have happened in our history. And I would like to submit, Mr. Chairperson, that if you look at our history, again from 1888, when King Lobengula signed the Moffat Treaty, this country has not gone for a period of more than 15 years uninterrupted without violence, without force being used against the people of Zimbabwe. And I'm going to quickly run through this historical connection, just to illustrate that this, at all material times, has been a very violent state, in respect of which coercion is used against the people to reproduce a certain political order, in which to push the agenda of power retention, either by the colonial establishment or by the post-colonial establishment. And you recall, Mr. Chairman, and Professor Maduku knows a lot about what I'm talking about. He has written a lot about it. We had the Moffat Treaty in 1888, followed by the Rad concession, followed by the granting of a royal charter to the British Southern African Company, BSAC, led by Cecil John Rhodes. The charter gave Cecil Rhodes, or his company, the capacity to pass ordinances or law in this country. It also gave him the unfettered right over our land and over our minerals. And so soon after the granting of this charter in 1889, an entire army was unleashed on the people of Zimbabwe from Matabeleland all the way to what was then known as Mashonaland. So violence was at the genesis of this state. Then you had violence continuing all the way to the death or surrender or capture. Historians are not very agreed of King Lobengula in 1894. Then you had resistance by black people, leading to what many call the first Chimurenga, but in fact it's not, the so-called rebellion of 1896. That's violence. This violence, Comrade Chairperson, continued all the way to 1912. And in 1914, the various contestations between black people who were saying this is our land, and that neither the Moffat Treaty or the Rat Concession gave you a sovereignty of our lands, and the contestations of the company, the roads company saying this is our land, the contestations of the crown saying this is also our land because we gave you, the company, the right to preside over it through the Royal Charter of 1889. Those contestations were heard by the Privy Council in a case called INRE Southern Rhodesia in 1940. So there was a period of allow, but violence erupted again in 1923, 1925, again over land, forcing and prompting the Rhodesian regime to appoint what was called the Maurice Carter Commission. And the Maurice Carter Commission was determining the question of whether, number one, blacks should be allowed to own land. Number two, whether whites should co-own land with the black people side by side, or whether whites should own land on their own, solely and exclusively. The result of the Maurice Carter Commission was that whites should own land own land exclusively on their own. The findings of the Maurice Carter Commission were codified in a law, Comrade Chairperson. That law is known as the Land Apportionment Act of 1931. It totally dispossessed black people in this country of their lands. It forced people to go into reserves. Violence started again. There were armed skirmishes across the length and breadth of this country. And it was the military, the colonial military, that was used with great force to subjugate a protesting black population. That the emergence of the colonial state also coincided with the emergence of black labor. As way back as 1894, they introduced a hard tax where black people were asked to pay 10 pence, but you could only get 10 pence if you were going to work in a farm or in a mine. So by the 40s, there were now serious black unions in this country, with the main one led by a man called Benjamin Burombo, who organized the protest in Wange in 1944. That strike, Mr. Chairperson, was the genesis of the nascent nationalist movement, which would then be led by Joshua Ngomo in the 50s. So we have never known peace. It has always been violence, with the state using violence against the black population. The nationalist movement, the organized nationalist movement, saw the execution of the War of Liberation starting in the late 50s, the early 60s, until the colonial establishment here, or the white establishment here, broke away from the colonial establishment by unilaterally declaring independence on the 11th of November 1965. UDI, as we call it, just accelerated violence. And so we had a war of liberation that only ended in 1979 and left 50,000 people, black people, dead in this country. So the colonial state was primarily a violent, vicious state that reproduced its minority rule through violence, oppression and repression of the black people. After independence, nothing changed, with great respect, Comrade Chairperson. Up until 1979, you had two armies. A guerrilla army led by nationalists fighting a colonial or neo-colonial troop led by Ian Smith and generals like General Peter Walls. I suspect that part of the challenge we have in this country is that in 1980, one army, a black one, just succeeded another one, the white army, without the infrastructure of cohesion, of centralism being decimated, which is why, Comrade Chairperson, the first threat that the post-independent government faced in 1982, the challenges of so-called dissidents, and I use that word with great circumspection and apology, they responded in a military way. Any other person would have engaged in dialogue with the communities that were affected. But our government responded in the only way it knew best, namely a military response. And that military response, we now call it Gukura Hundi, a process in respect of which 20,000 of our country's peasants perished. It is good that we're having this commission of inquiry around what happened on the 1st of August 2018. But I think that something is wrong with our country, that we have not had a commission of inquiry, a public commission of inquiry into a happening where over 20,000 people lost their life. There's something wrong there, and very wrong, Comrade Chairperson. So 30,000 people were killed by the army, led by the 5th Brigade, some of whose commanders are sitting in the present-day government. Directed by cabinet ministers, some of whom are sitting in the present-day government. And again, you can see the gap if you were counting the periods. You can see, unfortunately, that we've never had more than 15 years of uninterrupted peace since 1888. And in fact, Mr. Chairman, if you had time, I would actually argue that we've never had peace since 1450. It has just been violence. It has just been violence. So after Gukura Hundi, and I want to say that between 1980 and 1990, there was serious political violence as well against the ZAPU people, against the UANC people. I grew up in a township called Zimbabwean. Our neighbors' houses were stoned for supporting Bishop Mzoliwa's UANC. This is something that I personally witnessed as a little boy in the ghetto. So they've always been political violence in this country. Despite the bigger picture of Gukura Hundi, there were these side stories and side shows that have been taking place in our country. Then you had, Mr. Chairperson, the violence associated with our land reform program. And I submit that whilst no one can question the imperative of land reform in this country, I would like to submit that the violence that associated our land reform program was totally unnecessary, absolutely unnecessary. The lives of black workers were lost, the lives of commercial farm owners were lost, the lives of livestock, dogs, cats were lost during that exercise. An exercise which is still continuing. 20 years after the land reform program, we are still occupying farms, even as I'm talking to you right now. In 1999, the MDC was born, pursuant to a National Working People's Convention that was held in Hillside, about 5 kilometers away from this venue, on the 24th and the 26th of February in 1999. Commissioner Maduku also attended with myself at that convention. The formation of the MDC is the first real threat from an organized democratic political opposition ushered into Zimbabwe a new kind of violence. A new kind of violence. And that violence starts after the constitutional referendum that was held on the 10th and 11th of February 2000. We had a constitutional referendum, Comrade Chairperson, and a civic society organized ourselves in a civic body known as the National Constitutional Assembly. And the referendum had a simple question: yes or no. Yes to those who wanted a commission that had been prepared by a commission of inquiry chaired by the late Chief Justice Godfrey Chitausiku, and those who said no. So we mobilized for the no vote. Dr. Maduk was part of our campaign, and the no vote succeeded. This was the first time in the history of our country, Comrade Chairperson, that the government and indeed the ruling party had lost in any plebiscite, in any referendum, in any election. But that referendum, number one, it created the land reform program, because white farmers were perceived to have been supporting the opposition in the no vote. So as I said, the referendum was on the 11th of February 2000. The first farm occupations took place a few days later on the 14th of February 2000. So there's actually a connection which is uncontested, which is undisputed, between ZANU-PF's loss in the constitutional referendum and the violence that started and emerged and has been a permanent part of our infrastructure from 2000. We saw massive violence afterwards, political violence. In 2000, we lost a number of activities from our party, people like Talent Mabika, Chiminya, and so forth. I'm going to speak about the people that we have lost later on, but there was massive violence against our movement. We went to an election on the 26th of June 2000, where our young movement did extremely well. Out of the contested 120 seats, we actually won 58 seats. But ZANU only managed to get a decent majority because at the time the president could appoint 20 extra members of parliament. And I need to say that we took, of the seats that we lost, we took 15 of them, or rather, we took many of them. We filed election petitions before the High Court of Zimbabwe. And at the High Court level, we actually won 15 election petitions. So that our result would have been 58 plus the 15, and would have been the majority party in 2000. But sadly, all our appeals, for reasons that I don't want to go to, were reversed. On appeal, all the 15 cases we had won at High Court level were reversed. But I'm saying this to point out to the fact that when we went to the presidential election that was held on the 11th of March 2002, given how well we had done as MDC in the June 2000 election, there was no one who doubted that Morgan Richard Changirai was going to win that election, was going to defeat the ZANU-PF candidate, President Mugabe. So it was not a surprise that on the eve of that election, the military, through General Navash, issued a statement, Comrade Chairperson, in respect of which it made it clear that it would not recognize any result from the general election of 2002 unless someone with the liberation credentials had won. And Mr. Chairperson, allow me to read the quotation. So General Zunalashi said, his full names were General Vitalis Zunalashi. So he stated, to this end, let it be known that the highest office in the land is a straitjacket whose occupant is expected to observe the objectives of the liberation struggle. We will therefore not accept, let alone support, or salute anyone with a different agenda that threatens the very existence of our sovereignty, our country, and our people. So, we speak about the coup that happened in November of 2017, Comrade Chair. I would like to submit that this statement was actually the first coup, or the first preemptive coup that this country saw in March 2002. And you know, Mr. Chairperson, that President Mbeki appointed a commission of inquiry led by General Kampepe into the 2002 election, which was released. Your government, the South African government, didn't want to release it, but fortunately, litigation released it. And the findings of the Kampepe report was that the election was not free and fair, and that Morgan Tsvangirai would have won that election, the 2002 election. And these statements, Comrade Chairperson, have been repeated over and over again. On the 29th of November 2010, the Commissioner General of the Police, Augustine Chihuri, I don't know where he is at the present moment. And I'm not sure whether he still believes in this statement, but he stated as follows: this country came through blood and the barrel of a gun, and it will never be recolonized through a simple pen which costs as little as 5 cents. That's a member of the security forces who, in terms of section 206 of our constitution, must be neutral, must be impartial, and serves the state, not a political party. I've got another statement made by Brigadier General Douglas Nikayaramba. This is what he said in 2011. Daydreamers who want to reverse the gains of our liberation struggle will continue daydreaming. They can go to hell. They will never rule this country. No one will rule this country without any revolutionary credentials. The same statement, Comrade Chairperson, or a similar statement was repeated at a rally by ZANU-PF in Murombezi this very Saturday. This past Saturday, the Vice President of the country, the esteemed Chiwenga, General Chiwenga, made more or less the same statements that Advocate Nelson Chamisa and others like myself are daydreamers. That there is no vacancy and there will never be a vacancy in the presidency. So this is consistent. This is consistent, Comrade Chairperson. I want to speak to and make the point that it is us, the ordinary men and women of Zimbabwe, who have been the victims of violence. Yes. And victims are not perpetrators, Comrade Chairperson. Victims will always be victims. We don't hold state power. We don't control the armed organs of the state. We're just poor victims. In 1999, we formed a movement. That movement was founded on constitutionalism. That movement was founded on peace. That movement was founded on the rule of law. And it had to be, historically, Mr. Chairperson, because what we were fighting, what we were trying to remove was violence, was unconstitutionalism, was the abuse of the rule of law. So the MDC could never have been anything else, because the mischief that led to the formation of the MDC was this wrong, terrible picture of violence, of capture, of a predatory state, of a toxic state. And so, despite temptations, we've remained loyal to the values of constitutionalism, of the rule of law, and of peaceful democratic change in Zimbabwe. And we've refused, Comrade Chairperson, we've refused the temptation, because oftentimes the path to democracy becomes long and painful. Oftentimes it becomes very painful. And our struggle has been long. We've been in the trenches since 1999. So oftentimes it's easy to forget the bigger picture. But we have refused and remained steadfast in the path of peaceful change, democratic change to our country. Mr. Chairperson, I've got a roll of honor. We call it the roll of honor. This list has got over 3,000 people that we have lost over the years at the hands of Zimbabwe. And can I be allowed to submit the same as Exhibit A? And I'm just going to highlight some of the key characters we have lost. In 2000, we lost 2 outstanding cadres of our struggle in Bohera. One was Tichaona Chiminya, and the other one was Talent Mabiki. A High Court judgment by Justice Bartlett identified the killers of Talent and Chiminya. It identified them as state agents Kitsia Tota and Biri. A High Court judgment. Notwithstanding that High Court judgment, there has not been a prosecution to this very day. And I know that Piri is roaming somewhere in Chipinge. I think he's farming in Chipinge. I don't know where Kitsia Tota is, but he's roaming somewhere in Zimbabwe. There's been no prosecution. Another sad case, Mr. Chairperson, is the case of Tonderai Sergeant Ndira, a brilliant, fine young man who hailed from the dusty town of Mabvuku. He was abducted in 2008 during the runoff to the June 2008 election. He was killed in Goromons. He was a big man physically. He was a big man, he was a big boy, very athletic. When his body was found, Comrade Chairperson, his remains could only fill a 5-kilogram packet of rolamine. And his father was only able to identify his remains at Parengatwa Hospital because of a copper bangle that he put on his right hand side. Otherwise, everything had been destroyed and crushed. In 2008, his lawyers at the time, Advocate Mtetwa, who is here, filed what we call in our law a habeas corpus, which is an application for the release of someone who has disappeared. So on their way to argue this habeas corpus, news reached the lawyers that Tondera Indira's father had just identified him through that copper bank, we call it a bangle in this part of the world. The matter was heard before Justice Ben Kachwan, who is now a judge of our Constitutional Court. The police representatives who appeared in that court proceeding then advised the court that this court application is now unnecessary and it has to be concluded as a matter of urgency because we are going to give Tondera Indira a pauper's burial the following day without a post-mortem. And thanks to State Counsel, the lawyer who was standing for the State Counsel, who is the secretary to this commission, Mrs. Virginia Mapis. She says, there are things that my conscience would allow me to do. So she refused to be part of the process to do with the pauper's burial. 2008 was terrible. 2008 was terrible. We lost hundreds of cadres in violence that was perpetrated by the army against the opposition. Because our crime was simple. We had dared to win the election that was held on the 28th of March in the year of our Lord 2008. This violence was most severe in Headlands because of the activities of the then Minister of State Security, Didmas Mutasi. This violence was most severe in Mashona and Central. Mr. Chairperson, one family in a village called Chawona lost 15 people on the same day in 2008. The perpetrators are known. They've never been prosecuted. Mr. Chairperson, allow me to submit as Exhibit B. Exhibit A is the roll of honor. Exhibit B is an affidavit that was prepared by Hilton Chironga in the Constitutional Court of Zimbabwe in case number CCZ 42 of 2018. This affidavit was signed on the 3rd of June 2015. What Mr. Chironga was trying to do, and Mr. Rashid Stewart Mahia, the applicant in this matter, we have in our constitution, Comrade Chair, there's a provision in section 210 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the setting up of an independent complaints mechanisms against the security forces. Notwithstanding that our constitution became law in 2013, the powers that be have refused to actualize through the enactment of an act of parliament this commission. So what Mr. Chironga did was he took the government to court, the Minister of Home Affairs, the Minister of Defense, and the government of the Republic of Zimbabwe to say, look, please actualize this commission. There are many commissions which we have not, but this is one of them. To justify his local standard, to justify why he had legal footing to bring this application, he had to tell his story. He was a victim of 2008 violence. And I'm just going to read a few paragraphs from his affidavit. That is before the Constitutional Court. We argued this matter 3 years ago. The Constitutional Court has not handed down judgment. But I'll just read 3 paragraphs to capture the violence in our system. So I'll read from paragraph 8.4. So he says, in my own case, I have a special interest in bringing the instant application. On the 20th of June 2008, I was at home, that is Musiwa village, close to Nyachuru school, Mazoe in Ward 11, sleeping with my family. In the early hours of the morning, we woke up and found our homestead surrounded by a rowdy crowd that included Richard Chirongwe, the ZANU-PF electoral candidate for Mazoe constituency in the March 2008 election. Soldiers in the form of Cairo Mandu and Chamnorwa Chakanyuka and various other persons whom I believe were members of the security agency, in particular the CIO. At our homestead was myself, my brother Taingwa Gibbs Chirongo, who had been elected on an MDC ticket as councillor for Ward 11 in the national election that was held on the 28th of March 2008. Also present was my mother, Nelia Chironga, my sister, Susan Chironga, and two of my uncles, Joel Ngwani and Hama Madamombe. Richard Chirongwe and his team proceeded to open fire on us. My brother, Taingwa Gibbs Chironga, was shot and killed, and he died on the spot. The rest of us froze in our steps, and Richard Chirongwe's team started assaulting us viciously. My two uncles, Joel and Hama, had their heads hit on the rocks, with the result that they too died on the spot at that very moment. My mother, my sister, and myself were severely beaten. So brutal were the assailants that they even forced us to drink a herbicide known as paraquat. Fortunately, we did not swallow the same. In my case, my tongue is now permanently lacerated, and I've nearly lost my tongue as a result of the paraquat. My brother did not have any children, but my uncle Joel was married and had 4 children. My uncle Hama was married and had 7 children. As of the present moment, I'm looking after the dependents of the aforesaid deceased. We reported the matter to the Zimbabwe Republic Police, but instead, we were in fact arrested and incarcerated for making the report. Now, Mr. Chairperson, this is a ubiquitous story in this country. This is a ubiquitous story in this country. There have been various reports on violence in this country. There have been various reports on violence perpetrated by security agents, perpetrated by the military. And I want to refer, Mr. Chairperson, your committee, to what I will call as Exhibit C, which is a report produced by the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum, dated July 2012, called A Culture of Impunity in Zimbabwe, a report on access to justice for survivors of organized violence and torture, OVT, in Zimbabwe. If I might so submit, Mr. Chairperson. The violence on our people has also been noted and recorded in our law reports. So unintentionally, our law reports have become witnesses to the brutality of the regime in Zimbabwe over the years. And allow me, Mr. Chairperson, to just go through a few of the cases that are reported. There are quite a few lawyers on the commission. So in other words, this is evidence that was accepted. These are judgments that are pronounced on violence in Zimbabwe, perpetrated against the people of Zimbabwe. One of the worst cases of political violence is a case called Mberengwa West election petition. The citation, I know there are lawyers amongst you, is 2002, Volume 1, Zimbabwe Law Report, page 233. There was serious violence in this constituency against the MTC candidate, Sekai Holland, and other MTC members. That violence was principally done by security agents and a war veteran known as Pikichitor. You will find these facts in that judgment. Another judgment I want to refer to is the case of Chauke versus Mar. This was violence that took place in Chiredzi North. The case deals with serious cases of illegal electoral practices, violence. The citation of that case, which was later held on appeal by our current Chief Justice, and of concern, Mr. Chairperson, is the violence against women. Our violence is indiscriminate. You would have thought that there is gender respect. There isn't. So you will see in this case serious violence on women. The citation of Chauke versus Mari is judgment number SC 147 of 2007. The next case I wish to refer to is the case of Eugenia Teera versus Minister of Defense. The citation is High Court Harare 21 of 2007. And this case involved the plaintiff, Mrs. Teera, suing the Zimbabwean National Army for the sum of $70,000 for damages for pain, shock and suffering and contumalia as a result of an unlawful assault, and assault that was inflicted on her by members of the Zimbabwean National Army in Glenview. And the judgment was handed down by Justice Mungwe. And I'm just going through the notorious cases, some of the notorious cases. Another very notorious case is the case of Justina Mkoko versus the Attorney General. The citation is SC 11/12. It's a very sad judgment, Mr. Chairperson. It's an indictment to our society. It's an indictment to this state. What happened there was that the applicant Justina Mkoko was abducted and tortured for months by security agents. Tortured for months by security agents. After months, she was then following this habeas corpus application that I've referred to. She was then released. When she was released, it was established that she had not been in the custody of the Zimbabwe Republic Police. And that is very significant because the only people allowed constitutionally to arrest on reasonable suspicion of the commission of an offense are members of the police. It was established that she had not been detained by the police. So she brought an application in the Constitutional Court, in the Supreme Court, and the judgment was actually written by our current Chief Justice, Chief Justice Malala. She argued that the right to dignity, codified in Section 51 of our Constitution, the right not to be subjected to torture, cruel or degrading treatment, codified in Section 53 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, had been breached. And the Constitutional Court unanimously, all of them, concluded that the state, through its agents, it violated the applicant's rights protected in the old Constitution, Section 13.1, Section 15.1, and Section 18.1 of the Constitution, and therefore ordered a permanent stay of the prosecution. In other words, the Constitutional Court felt that the violations of their own rights were so great that any criminal proceedings had to be permanently stayed. This is a decision of the highest court in our land. So this violence is not of our making. It's codified and witnessed in our law. It was. The next case I want to talk about is the case of Lillian Chinyerere versus Minister of Home Affairs. Citation is HC 11969 of 2016. Just listen to the facts, Comrade Chair. On the 26th of August 2016, Lillian Chinyerere, a woman aged 64, was sitting near the Roton Road Magistrate Court, which was assaulted heavily by armed riot police officers. They were kicking her, and some were beating her with truncheons. And it goes on and on and on. This is the violence that takes place in our society. Another case I want to refer to is the case of Vainan Glove and 5 others versus Officer Mazarura and 2 others. The citation is GL 467 stroke 472 stroke 50. Can I also refer to the case of Sophia Tagwire versus Officer in Charge Triangle and 2 others, Chirez Magistrate Court. The citation is GL 184 stroke 2015. This is violence in Mashingo province. Can I also refer you to the case of Ellen Mteiwa versus Officer in Charge Mashingo province. And the citation is GL 208 stroke 50. I also refer you, Mr. Chairman, to the case of Gertrude Changwensha versus Officer in Charge Triangle and 2 others. Again, Mashingo province. The citation is GL 201 stroke 15. Can I also refer you to the case of Constance Chuma versus Mponi Simpov and 3 others. The citation is High Court Harare 19 stroke 15. And I also refer you to the case of Cynthia Fungai Manjoro versus Minister of Home Affairs, Commissioner General of Police, and the Prosecutor General. And the case number is HC 2965 of 40. I can go on and on, Your Excellency. But the point is that this is a very violent society. The point is that there's only been one victim. That is ordinary men and women of Zimbabwe. There's only been one victim, the majority of members of the movement for democratic change. There's only been one victim. On the 11th of March 2007, civic society organized under the banner of Save Zimbabwe campaign organized a peace march in Zimbabwe. Which was sanctioned as it were by the police in terms of Section 6 of the Public Order Security Act, POSA. I was part of that crowd. Professor Maduka was part of that crowd. The peace march was supposed to take place at Zimbabwe grounds in Highfield. Zimbabwe grounds is a famous ground that we use here in Harare in particular, with the liberation people or us pro-democracy people. It's like the home of our freedom. We were arrested, Comrade Chair, and placed inside a police station, Machipisa police station, in broad daylight. We were, to say assaulted is an understatement. We were butchered by members of the Zimbabwe Republic Police in broad daylight. They were using anything and everything that they could use. The Shambo, Comrade Chairperson, I don't know who invented that Shambo. That Shambok, if it hit 3 strips, if it hit you, it came away with your skin. They were using police truncheons. Morgan Changirai was left for dead. The person who was assaulted, second best if there is such a term, was Professor Maduku there. Comrade Chairperson, they took a belt. They took a belt which had an iron buckle. So the iron buckle had a little hook, an iron hook. They were hitting Professor Maduku in the head.
They were referring to his head, saying his head. Yes.
Yeah. When they were beating me, they were referring to my mouth. This one talks too much. But in the case of Professor Maduku, they were referring to his head. And they were hitting him. And the blood just oozed out of his head. When they were beating us, they were busy shooting people outside. Gifty Tandari was shot on that particular day, the 11th of March, 2007. We were taken to Harare Central Police Station, across the road, Mr. Chairperson. I'm not a medical doctor. So at that time, the wounds in Dr. Maduku's head had clotted. So not being a medical doctor, I took him to a tape. We couldn't move Dr. Morgan Changirai. We thought he was dead. None of us could go near. He was just lying in the road at the Harare Central Police Station. But with Dr. Maduku, I actually took him personally to a tape, knowing that you don't do that. So I removed my shoe and took my socks and started washing him. But that cloth now opened and blood just came out. That man over there. On the 11th of March, we were taken to hospital to the Avenues Clinic, where we stayed for a few days. They wanted our wounds, the swelling, to heal a little bit before they took us to remand court. So after like 3 or 4 days, they took us to remand court, court number 6 at Rotten Row. When we were taken in court, something that I've never seen happened. both the magistrate and the prosecutor, Ms. Yambi, she's very senior in the National Prosecuting Authority, both the magistrate and the prosecutor broke down and refused to hear our case and said, go back to hospital.
Yeah.
So we went back again to the avenues. So we are the victims, Comrade Chairperson. We are the victims of brutal violence by a brutal state. On the following week, the 18th of March, at Harare International Airport, Advocate Nelson Chamisa was leaving the country as a member of parliament for a meeting in Brussels of the ACP. When he was brutally assaulted at the Harare International Airport in broad daylight and left for dead. By the same regime. So your table of reference number 1 says to inquire into the circumstances leading to the 1st of August 2018 post-election violence. These are the circumstances, Comrade Chairperson. These are the circumstances. We are dealing with a violent state, a state that has no respect to the dignity of the person, a state that has no respect to the right to life codified in Section 48 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. A violent state, a predatory state. But the violence, Comrade Chairperson, the violence of ZANU-PF has not been monopolized to us in the democratic movement and to ordinary people in Zimbabwe. It has also been violence targeted at internal forces. And I need to say, just to connect the dots, that it was as a result, Comrade Chair, I know you're familiar with this, it was as a result of the March 11 assault that I've just described, that SADC then called for an extraordinary summit in Dar es Salaam on the 29th of March 2007, which is the summit that then appointed President Thabo Mbeki to act as an intermediator and facilitator on the Zimbabwean crisis. Mr. Chair, I know you chaired the tail end of that mandate when on the 23rd of January 2009, you presided over an extraordinary summit of SADC that gave birth to the Government of National Unity at your then resident Nyamandlo in Pretoria or Tswana. So that is where it came from. I thought I would just complete the dots. But I was talking about the fact that violence is not monopolized to members of the democratic movement and to ordinary Zimbabweans. There is also massive violence within ZANU-PF itself. And violence inside ZANU-PF is used as an instrument to deal with opposition, to deal with dissenting voices. On the 23rd of March 1975, the then leader of ZANU, Advocate Chairman Herbert Chitepo, was killed in Lusaka. There are various reports about who killed him, including books. But Mr. Chairperson, I know you know that the Zambian government set up a commission of inquiry, a judicial commission of inquiry, whose findings are very clear. Herbert Chitepo was killed by his own comrades in Zambia. And you know that many nationalists were arrested. When you read the report, it's fascinating. Because all the people there, the leading members of ZAND went with QCs like him to appear before that commission. And the findings of the Commission of Enquiry by the Zambian government came to that conclusion, that it was an inside job. And you also recall that before the assassination of Chitepo, there was a rebellion in ZANU by young military officers led by Thomas Nari. Hence it's known as the Nari Rebellion.
Sorry, if I may interject. I was going to ask if possible for you to submit a relating
With respect to Mr. Chairperson, people were given free room to give them. I have to have the same license. And what I'm speaking to is germane. It's the circumstances. Term of reference A. The circumstances leading to 1 August. So I hope I can be allowed to So what happened was that these 2 boys, Thomas Nari and Badze, led the revolt. They were very junior officers. So they led the revolt against the senior ZANU hierarchy. And their cry was that, look, we are living in poor conditions whilst the chefs are enjoying. You know, they're spending money, they're doing what. So these boys revolted and went against their senior leaders and did many things that included capturing the wife of Commander Tongogara, Josiah Tongogara. A battalion then came from Tanzania. ZANU then sent a battalion led by Solomon Mchuru to put down these youngsters. Many of them were shot, Comrade Chair, violently. But it is what happened to Badze and Thomas Nari that I want to talk about. So what happened was that when the rebellion was put down, the frontline states, through President Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, issued a statement to the effect that, in fact, it was a directive, that there to be due process, Comrade Chairperson, and that Nari and Badze should go through a trial, through due process, and that they were not to be executed. They were not to be executed. They were not to be executed. So they could be fired from the struggle, decommissioned from the struggle. What happened, Comrade Chair, is said. They were tried, they were convicted. They were decommissioned. That was the official sentence. That was the official sentence. But the actual sentence was that in the middle of the night, 10 or 15 of these boys were taken to a place called Chifombo in Zambia. Pits were dug. They were put inside, like we see in Western movies. And their heads remained. Then ZANU-PF took axes and hit them on the head, executed them. They were left for days to be eaten by scavengers in Chifombo in 1975. Chairperson, I'm being advised that Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation has cut its live coverage. So I want to make an official complaint. It's conduct consistent with the ruling party. In 1977, Comrade Chair, let me just give a quick what happened is that in 1975 the Mozambican front was opened. So guerrillas from ZANU and ZAPU moved into Mozambique. But because they were so unhappy with the hierarchy of both ZANU and ZANU, they went and formed a new organization called ZIPA, the Zimbabwe People's Army, ZIPA. It had 18 commanders, one from ZAPU, the other one from ZANU. So I think the leader was, I think, JZ Moyo. And then Solomon Mujuru, and it went on like that. When President Mugabe was released from prison, ZIPA Comrade Chairperson did not recognize President Mugabe. So when the nationalists went for talks in Geneva in 1976, there were two organizations. There was ZIPA, then there was ZANU. So the nationalists were not happy with that. So what they did was in January of 1977, I told Mr. Chairperson that ZBC is carried. Mr. Chairperson, ZIPA at the time was led by these young radicals. That included the late Wilfred Manda, whose Chimurenga name was Zinashe Machingura. That included people like Webster Gwawea, Paka Chipoera, young Marxist radicals. So what happened was that in January of 1977, they were called and they eventually agreed to a meeting at a compromise area, namely Baera, as opposed to Chimoyo or Nyadzonyo. So they said, okay, fine. We will go to Baera. They were then called, 50 of them were then called in a basement. So they went down that basement. When they went down that basement, they found themselves surrounded by Frelimo soldiers. And they were arrested. Many of them were shot on the spot. Those that survived, like Wilfred Manda Zinashe Machingura, He was only released and only came back to Zimbabwe in 1981. Over almost 2 years after independence. And only because a German crew of journalists had discovered that there were some guerrillas who were still detained because they'd been put in northern Mozambique in a forest where they couldn't run away because they were animals. I had the privilege of representing Wilfred Manda. He was telling me that when they were in prison, they used to be fed rice cooked with stones. So when you are chewing it, you don't know whether you are chewing a rice or a thing. That's the son we know, Comrade Chair, a violent political party. That was 1977. In 1978, senior leaders of ZANU-PF, who included the late Kumbirai Kangai, he later sold out. That's how the hierarchy knew of this. Mukudzei Midzi, Henry Hamadzilipi, Christopher Mudzingwa, and others in Rugare Gumbo. Rugare Gumbo is still alive. So they were accused of organizing a coup against President Mugabe. And their argument was that you, Robert Mugabe, you have taken over, but you were not elected at the Congress. Then one of them sold out, as I said. They were arrested, Comrade Chair. Many of them were shot, like the Wilfred Manda group. Some of them were put in detention. Like the Wilfred Manda group, a few of them only came back to Zimbabwe, including Rugare Gumbo, way after independence. When again they were discovered by journalists or embassies who knew that there were people. That's before independence. After independence, we have prominent people that have been killed. Sidney Malunga. The famous joke in Zimbabwe is that you will see a black dog, and the black dog is a euphemism for political assassination. And over the years, there have been many black dogs, the Comrade Chairperson, in our political landscape. The most famous of these political assassinations is the assassination of General Mujuru on the 14th of August, 2012. General Mujuru was found burnt to death at his farm in Beatrice. Evidence given at his inquest was that those who tried to douse the fire, the more they poured water over the fire, the more the flames grew. Meaning that, Mr. Chairperson, a very sophisticated accelerant, something more complicated than petrol, had been used to assassinate General Mujuru. And we know that General Mujuru was perceived as a real threat inside the system. Go on and on internal violence. They've been violent inside ZANU-PF, they've been violent against us, against democratic forces. I want to refer, Mr. Chairperson, to the disappearance of Itai Dzamara on the 9th, I think 9th of March 2015. To date, Mr. Chairman, no one knows where he is. It's a duty in our constitution to protect the citizen. The constitution enjoins on the state the duty to protect the citizen. Section 35 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. All Zimbabwean citizens are equally entitled to the rights, privileges, and benefits of citizenship. In subsection 3, all Zimbabwean citizens are entitled to the following rights and benefits. A, to the protection of the state, to the protection of the state. And I would like to contend the Comrade Chairperson that people like Itai Zamara, people like all those people that are on that roll of honor that I've submitted, they've been denied protection by the state, which is mandatory, which is obligatory in terms of the Constitution. Mr. Chairperson, we have been a very peaceful organization that believes in constitutional democratic change. And I want to run through you the history of peaceful constitutional resistance by the MDC, where no one was killed, where no one has been called, sorry, where the army has not been called. We've been in the trenches for a long time, peacefully, constitutional, without any violence, without things that happened on the 1st of August, 28. Way back on the 11th of June, 1992, the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions organized a massive demonstration in this country. It was on a Saturday, led by Gibson Sibanda, led by the late Morgan Changirai. There was no violence. People were arrested, and those who were arrested then challenged the then Law and Order Maintenance Act and would say that you needed police permission before you demonstrated, and the Constitutional Court agreed with that. On the 10th of March, on the 10th of December, on the 10th of December, 1998, 10th December, as you know, Comrade Chair, is International Human Rights Day. The Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions organized a massive stay-away, possibly the most successful we have ever had in the history of the labor movement. And we now, it was on a Tuesday, we now call it a Red Tuesday. Again, no one was killed, soldiers were not called for, the police contained this. The following year in March, we had other demonstrations against the proposed tax. No one was killed, the army was not called. In June of 2004, we organized what was called the final push. We called it the final push. So we naively thought that through a demonstration would remove this regime. So we organized this massive demonstration. ZANU countered that. They actually put more people than us. So the net result was that there were thousands and thousands of people in the streets of Zimbabwe. We, the demonstrators, were outnumbered. By ZANU PF. No one was killed. The army was not called in. The police controlled the situation. In May, in particular May 9 and May 10 of 2005, we organized what was called a broad front. And Dr. Maduku, Professor Maduku was part of that. We demonstrated against the cleanup operation, Operation Muramba 3, for 2 days. Again, The police were able to control us. The army was not called in. No one was shot. No one was killed. Then I come to the Save Zimbabwe campaign. I've already referred to that. At the end of 2007, we organized ourselves under what was then known as the Save Zimbabwe campaign. What had happened, Comrade Chair, is that ZANU went to its annual December conference at a place called Goromont and resolved that the presidential election that was to be held in 2008 would now be held in 2010. So we said that's not going to happen. So we said we want the election in 2008, but under a new constitution. Those were the themes of the Save Zimbabwe campaign. So we organized what we called DRC, Democratic Resistance Program. And so we started demonstrating in January, 16 January in particular, in Bulawayo, then Gweru, then Harare, culminating in the 11th of March, peace march that I have referred to you. No one was killed. The police were able to contain this. The army was not called in. No one was shot. And there were many other demonstrations. There were many other demonstrations throughout this period. Many led by the NCA through Dr. Madugu is there. No one was killed. No one was shot. And the police was able to contain the cell. In July of 2016, we organized ourselves under the banner of NERA, National Election Reform Agenda, in which we were demanding electoral changes. NERA was expanded to include other parties. It became known as NERA. We organized demonstrations, Comrade Chairperson. A big one which was held on the 26th of August, 2016. Big demonstration. Again, the police were able to contain it. No one was shot. No single window pane was broken. The army was not called in. And it was because we were increasing the frequency of these demonstrations. That is when the government or the police, on the 1st of September 2016, banned for 3 months the happenings of the holding of public processions in Harare using Section 27 of the Public Order and Security Act. So we challenged that, and fortunately the Constitutional Court agreed with us. But again, no one was killed. On the 5th of June 2018, just this year, on the 5th of June 2018, a month before the election, as MGC Alliance, we organized a massive demonstration. There were probably 40,000 people, and there are videos, Comrade Chairperson. We marched from Africa Unity Square . We went down Jason Moyo Avenue to the head office of the Zimbabwe Election Commission, ZEC. We stood there whilst our leaders went and handed a petition. We marched back this time through Samora Machel Avenue. Samora Machel Avenue is very significant because that's where the government offices are. Constitutional Court is, the High Court is, the Supreme Court is. No one was hurt, no one was injured. The closest we came to violence was that we did press-ups in the streets. Nothing else. The police contained the situation very well. We were happy, we went to our homes, but we gave notice, Comrade Chairperson, we gave notice to the police that we were going to march in terms of the Public Order Security Act. We have never, in the history of the MDC, we have never carried out a demonstration in respect of which we have not provided for notification in terms of the Public Order Security Act, in respect of which we have not complied with the law. Because we have nothing to hide. We're not a guerrilla movement or a rebel movement. On the 11th of July 2018, a few weeks before the election, we gave notification of yet another procession. And again, thousands and thousands of people came. If you went on the roof of any building in Harare, particularly buildings adjacent to Samora Machel, buildings adjacent to Nelson Mandela, buildings adjacent to Jason Moore, it was a sea of people. It was a sea of red, of people marching. And that kind of crowd, no police can stop them if they decide to be violent, because they're just too many. But again, we were peaceful. We went to ZEC, gave a petition to ZEC. The commissioners of ZEC ran away. Justice Chikumba ran away. So we saw junior officers. We addressed the crowd there, marched again along Samora Machel Avenue, peacefully, went and was addressed by our leadership in Africa Unity Square. No window pane was broken. No vehicle was stolen. No shop was looted. The police were there, they controlled us. No one was shot, and the army was not called on by anyone. And on the 29th of November, Comrade Chairperson, we have given notification that we are going to march. Again, peacefully. Again, constitutional. Because Section 59 of the Constitution says we have a right to demonstrate peacefully and constitutionally. So anything that is done outside the law, and our organization is full of lawyers, anything done outside the law is not ours. And we're not afraid of the law. We believe in the law, even though sometimes it lets us down, but we religiously believe in the law. And sometimes, Comrade Chair, we go to court knowing fully that we're going to lose. But we do so because we believe in the law. And that's what we have been for years and years and years and years and years. even when we were at university, we've been involved in activism since university. We believe in the law. We will not betray the law, even though sometimes it betrays us, but we will not betray the law. We believe in the law. And I want to emphasize, anything done outside the law is not ours, and no one should give us paternity of it. Because it's not. So now I want to come to the 30th of election and the 1st of August. Mr. Chairperson, we ran an extremely difficult campaign. As a movement, we didn't have resources, and also our leader, Morgan Changirai, passed on, unfortunately, on the 14th of February, 2018. So we had to regroup, find a new leader very quickly, and hit the road running, because we knew that the election would have to be held at the latest by the 18th of August, 2018. We regrouped, Comrade Chairperson. We found a new leader in the form of Advocate Nelson Chamisa. We hit the ground hard and running. We campaigned, Comrade Chair, like we've never done before. We were in Binga. We were in Dotito. We were in Chipinge, in places that can't be found by GPS. We addressed over 87 star rallies across the length and breadth of Zimbabwe. And the quantitative output of our work was there for everyone to see. The massive crowds that attended our rallies. The choking crowds that attended our rallies. In Africa, I think only the ANC can do better than that. So when we went to this election, when we campaigned in this election, in places, particularly rural areas that we had never been, we genuinely believed that we were going to win this election. And after the election, until today, this very minute, Comrade Chair, we genuinely believe that we won this election. We genuinely believe, Comrade Chair, that Nelson Chamisa won this election as president. And that belief, Comrade Chair, is very important. That belief is very important because there's a behavior of winners and there's a behavior of losers. And because we genuinely believed we had won, Comrade Chairperson, there was no way we were going to put people on the step our own victory. There was no way. How do you spoil your own part? In my mother language, we say, it's illogical. But those who have lost will disturb the party.
Oh, yes.
And the behavior of ZANU-PF is not consistent with the party that won the election.
Yes.
There was violence on the 1st of August. For the first time in the history of this country, the army were called. Why? How many people were there to justify the calling of an army? I've just narrated, Comrade Chair, the long and consistent history of demonstrations which we have had, where thousands and thousands of people were there. The army was never called because by their very nature, Zimbabweans are not violent. Yes. We are not violent. It's not in our DNA. I've been a student leader, Comrade Chair. With Dr. Madugu there, we carried out a lot of demonstrations at the University of Zimbabwe. On 29 September 1989, we demonstrated against corruption. The following year, on the 29th of September 1999, we had a commemoration of that. The police came in and beat us up, and the university was closed on the 4th of October, and students were chased away. There is now a bar at the University of Zimbabwe called the 4th of October bar. But in those instances, there was no chair broken, there was no window broken. Now, we are now accused of doing things that we couldn't do when we were 22. Mr. Chairperson, I want to underscore our belief that Nelson Chamisa won this election. I say this with great respect to the Constitutional Court judgment. I'm not in any way mouse-sitting the Constitutional Court judgment. But I have to pose the question that Mr. Mnangagwa was declared the winner. But even as I sit here right now, Comrade Chair, I don't know the result. Was it 50.8, which was recanted by ZEC? Was it 50.6, which again was withdrawn by ZEC? Was it 50.4, which again was withdrawn by the Zimbabwe Election Commission? And the Constitutional Court judgment doesn't say Mr. Mnangagwa won by 50.1. All we know is that the judgment says he met the 50 plus 1 threshold, but without knowing how much. And from where I'm sitting, Comrade Chair, once ZEC, what happened was we filed a constitutional application and said your result of 50.8 is wrong. ZEC then agreed with us and said, yes, we agree with you. It's not 50.8, it's 50.6. Then we filed other papers, they said, no, we agree with you, it's not 50.6, it's 50.4. Now once ZEC does that, Comrade Chair, the onus is now upon them to justify their result now. Because we have prima facie shown that the result is wrong. So the onus is no longer on us. That's why in the hearing of the Constitutional Court, Advocate Tabani Mpofu said in his submissions that ZEC had sold Mr. Mnangagwa under the bus by admitting that the 50.8 was wrong, the 50.6 was wrong. But from our own verification, from our own forms, we hold a different result. But we accept the finality of the Constitutional Court judgment. But it doesn't mean that the Constitutional Court judgment deals with our understanding and firm belief that Nelson Chamisa won the 20. So, I want to come to 30, the election was held on the 30th of July. So, when the election takes place, at the polling station level, results are counted. Results are added up of every election that would have taken place at that polling station, meaning the local authority election, the parliamentary election, and the presidential election. These results are then collected in a form called a V11, which in terms of section 54 of the Electoral Act is then posted outside the polling station. That means for all intents and purposes, results are actually announced and declared at polling station level. When ZEC announces formally, they're just repeating that which would already have taken place. And Comrade Chairperson, because the maximum number, we used a polling station-based system, and the maximum number at a polling station is 1,000, which is not a great number. That means that when polling stations closed by 7 p.m. on the 30th of July 2018, most of them would have been through with their counting by 1 a.m. on the 31st of August 2018, because you're just counting 1,000, but in most cases there was no polling station with 1,000. There were like 600. In my own constituency, the highest polling station is 700 people. Otherwise it's 500, sometimes 300. And that's not a lot of numbers. And then you duplicate them by 3 for the local authority. So that means that there is absolutely no reason why Zimbabwe Election Commission should not be able to announce the results even on that very same day or the next day. Because the results are effectively counted at the polling station. Now, we had the background that affected us, and that was 2008. In 2008, we used the same system, Comrade Chair. The election was on the 28th of March 2008. We, through our own systems, through our own power of voter tabulation, we calculated our results, added them up, and on Sunday, the 29th of July 2008, 20 March, sorry, Chairperson, at 11 a.m. at the Stewart Room at the Mikus Hotel, in my capacity as Secretary General then of the MDC, I announced the results. But and that's why the law was then amended. Section 66A was then amended in the manner that it was amended. But the key point I want to make is that on the 13th and 14th of April 2008, SADC had an extraordinary summit on Zimbabwe at Mulungushi International Conference Center in Zambia, where SADC came up with a resolution that that no one had won the presidential election, and that Zimbabwe would have to go to a runoff, which runoff would be held on the 28th of June 2008. But Comrade Chairperson, the result was not there. The official presidential result would only be announced on the 5th of May 2008. So our fear in 2008 was that we have won this election, the longer they delay, they will cook these results. So they must announce the results now because they've got them already. That is why I was tasked to do a press conference on the 31st of July 2018, which is on YouTube. And I said the following, which is allowed by the law, Comrade Chairperson. I said, in terms of our own data, in terms of our own evidence, Advocate Nelson Chamisa has won this election. And that's what I said. I said, in terms of our own data. However, we are asking for ZEC, to make the formal declaration. It can't be as clear as Pike stuff. It can't be any clearer, Comrade Chairperson. It can't be any clearer. I'm sure you have been given the transcript, but it's on YouTube. Someone can connect it. It's on YouTube. And there's nothing fantastic about these declarations, Comrade Chair. Even Zan was doing it. Go to the Twitter handle of Mr. Mnangagwa. He sent a tweet on the 31st of July saying, we have won, but we wait for the official announcement. And in any event, Mangwana made the same announcement. Because a dubious nexus is trying to be made between my pronouncement on the 31st of August and 1 August. There's no link at all. There's no link at all. And if there was a link, Comrade Chairperson, then violence should have started in 2008. Because on 29 July 2008, I announced that Morgan Tsvangirai had won. There should also have been people who marched because Mr. Mnangagwa claimed victory. There should have been people who marched because Mr. Mangwana, on behalf of ZANU-PF, also claimed victory. There's nothing unique about the Ipset Dix, the verbatim pronouncement of a political party. That's the nature of democracy, Comrade Chairperson. That's the nature of democracy. So people will claim opinion polls are done. This one is going to win. So that's the full package of the election, of an election. And my little friend from the United Kingdom knows this better than I do. That's Ipset Dix. That's all. That's all. 1st of August, I was back at work. That was the first time I put on a suit. After an election, 1st of August, the first time I put on a suit, I went back to my law firm to work. When I got arrested, I think I need to. So I got arrested, Comrade Chairperson. And the background is that state agents were trying to kill me. So there was attacks on my mother, attacks on my brothers. There was, it was vicious. So I sought refuge in the Republic of Zambia. I crossed Zambezi River on the 8th of August, 2018. Notwithstanding that I was now on Zambian soil, state agents followed me. And squashed me, squished me. I don't know why I'm still alive. It's the grace of God. The Zambian people rescued me, the Zambian authorities rescued me, smuggled me into their country. I say smuggled because the official entrance into Zambia, the state agents in Zimbabwe just blocked it. They closed it. So to smuggle me into the road of incoming vehicles into Zimbabwe, we almost hit a tanker traveling on the wrong side of the road, going in the opposite direction. I got a court order from the Zambian High Court asking me to be at the Lusaka High Court at 8 a.m. on the 9th of August 2018. Zimbabwean state agents followed me into Zambia, unlawfully removed me from Zambia, notwithstanding that court order. So I was brought to Harare, and it was in court that I learned that I was now being accused of having incited and participated in violence on the 1st of August 2018. I was advised that I was with one Jim Kunaka. This was what was in the Form 242. The Form 242 is the remand form. When the police remand you, they've got a summary of facts against you. They said that I was driving a green Discover. It's a joke, Comrade Chairperson. I hardly know Jim Kunaka physically. I know him as a notorious leader of the Chipangano group that killed our people in Bari. That's how I know him. So even if I wanted to do violence, it's just ridiculous.
So if I want to do violence, is it that there are no other people who
that I would have to do it with Jim Kunaka?
So that I'll go to an extent of doing it with the Jim Kunaka.
It's very proper, but it's cut a long story short. They say I was driving a car. I don't even drive myself. Because I can't see. I don't drive myself. I don't own a Discovery, a green Discovery. But why would I demonstrate? Why would I demonstrate violently? Why would I start now, Comrade Chairperson? Why would we start now? So it's a lot of, with great respect, a lot of rubbish, with great respect. And for the record, Comrade Chairperson, I did not incite anyone on the 30th or on the 1st of August 2018. I did not participate in any acts of violence with anyone, let alone Jim Kunaka, with anyone on the 1st of August 2018. And some of you there as commissioners, you know me. You can be by character witnesses. And I have no intention of engaging in violence. And I've never engaged in violence. And I won't start now at the age of 52 when I couldn't do it at 22. Yeah. I learned around 5, 6 on social media that soldiers had shot people on the 1st of August. And I think I issued a tweet immediately condemning that violence. On the 2nd of October, so on the 2nd of August, that is when I learned that the police spokeswoman, Charity Charamba, had issued a statement that they were looking for me. And my lawyers, Mr. Mchadehama, went to the law and order saying, we want to bring our clients. And the CID says, we don't know anything about this. So that was on the Friday, now the 3rd of August. We went and did a press conference on the 3rd of August at my law firm. So now that, look, we wanted to surrender ourselves, but the police said, at law and order said, we don't know anything about it. When we finished this press conference on the chair, 15 white unmarked twin caps tried to abduct me from my law firm in Rowland Square. And we were saved, Comrade Chair, because one of the lawyers, they threw himself in front of the car that was in, the Junda car that was in front. He threw himself, Nyasham did. So that moment gap when this guy, when people say, you will kill someone, that's how he escaped. On the, around 6 p.m., I was called by the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. They were panicking. They said, results are going to be announced at 8 p.m. on the 3rd of August. And we hear that you guys, as MDC, you want to bring thousands of your supporters to protest. So I said to this commission, why would we do that when we believe we have won? And I said, I'm giving you my personal guarantee, my own personal guarantee is that no such thing will happen. And of course, no such thing will happen. But the state security agents had created this fiction. That is what we wanted to do. And as I said before, we don't do that. Mr. Chairperson, I want to conclude by dealing with how we see Mr. Nangagwa's setting up of this commission, his motives. We believe that, with great respect to the commission, that they are trying to use this commission to assault and emasculate the democratic movement. To cripple the democratic movement. To arrest key leaders of the democratic movement. Because they've done so before in the past, Comrade Chair. In 1982, arms of war were found in properties that belonged to ZANU, planted by the regime. Now it's now coming out in books. There's a brilliant book written by a British academician called Stuart Duran, which is exposing this. It's their modus operandi, it's their DNA. And it destroyed ZANU, it destroyed ZAPU. Gukura Wundi, those arms cache destroyed ZAPU. ZAPU was never the same until it was swallowed by ZANU in the Unit Accord of 22 December 1987. In 1997, Comrade Chair, I was privileged to defend the founding president of ZANU, Reverend Abaningstone. He was tried of treason. all the witnesses in his trial were soldiers who said Reverend Ngomo, sorry, Estole, he had given them weapons and he had asked them to go to Mozambique to train through Tamandai in Tipingi. One of the witnesses had a pathetic story. He said Reverend Ngomo sent him to wait in a, sorry, Reverend Story, sent him to wait in a bush near the National Sports Stadium. Sorry. He was holding a claymore mine. And the allegation was that he was going to use this claymore mine against the President Mugabe's motorcade. The state called the ballistic expert who said a claymore mine can't even blow a person on a bicycle. There was a video created in that trial. A video not of Reverend Dr. Ndabaningi's story, but of his wife Zina's story attending some meeting somewhere, which was used and admitted in evidence. Reverend Stolle was convicted by the late Justice Ishmael Chatiko. We noted an appeal, Comrade Chair. The appeal record disappeared. The record couldn't be prepared until he died. In 2002, they replayed the same script, this time against Morgan Tsvangirai. They cooked up a video in Canada, created by a top-class Mossad agent called Ari Ben Menashe. I should say a discredited Mossad agent called Ari Ben Menashe. A treason trial took place for over a year. Mr. Tsvangirai was represented by someone you know, Comrade Chairman, the great Advocate Bezos. Morgan Tsvangirai was acquitted by Justice Garo, sitting as Judge President. So this script of attempting to destroy democratic forces through false testimony, false evidence, including the planting of arms, is nothing new. We know it. They want to do it now as they did it yesterday. It's ZANU-PF DNA written all over. That's their style of operation. So, my prayer, Comrade Chair, and all the commissioners, is that I hope you'll be able to stand up to truth.
Yes.
And there's only one true story in this entire milieu of false testimonies that have been provided before you. There's only one true story. And that true story is that we are victims with an election stolen from us. But as if that was not enough, they are now going for us. So I pray, Comrade Chairperson, that, as Mahatma Gandhi said, the way of truth will find its way out. Thank you.
Mr. Tendai Biti, let me first thank you for that lesson in history. If you were not a lawyer, I think you could be a very good history professor. And also, let me observe that one of the hopes of this commission, with the permission of the chairman, I would say so, is that through its work, we shall find an end to the history of violence in Zimbabwe. And so, I have only one question. Would it be correct to say that in the same vein as you said that in 2002, the military made a statement before the elections that they would not accept or support any result that did not favor the revolutionary movement. And also a similar statement was made in 2011, just before 2011 elections by an unnamed Brigadier General, or if you named him, I don't know what his name. Would it then be correct to say that in keeping with that tradition, MDC spokesman, before the elections of July 30 this year, also said that they would not accept any result unless their leader won the elections?
Look, we have elections have been stolen from us. And thank you for the question. And it's good to see you. The elections have been stolen in Zimbabwe from our point of view. From 2002, 2008, the runoff, 2005, 2013, now 28. And you know, I hope I can call you Secretary, you don't mind me calling you Mr. Secretary General, that in respect of the 2018 election, all credible reports of the international community, the European Union reports, the report of the American Observer Mission, the MGIIRI, the two Commonwealth reports have all said that this election did not meet the test. I've referred to the Campepe report of 2002. The 2008 election, even continental bodies from SADC Parliamentary Forum, African Union, they all condemned that election. But notwithstanding that, we have not done anything extra legally to challenge the status quo, a status quo that we know is not legitimate. So in 2008, after the June 2008 election, we went to negotiate with President Mugabe, even though we knew that President Mugabe had not won the June 2008 election. But we negotiated with him. The net result was the government of national unity. So the MDC is a constitutional, law-abiding, law-respecting political party. And anyone who wants to sit into anyone that we set our people to lawlessness after the 30th of July election, that's not correct. And I want to underscore, Comrade Secretary, that we genuinely believe that we're going to win. We've never run a campaign that was as robust as the campaign which we ran in 2018. We've never run such a buoyant, campaign, such such an overwhelming campaign. And so when you hold that belief, you don't sit unlawfully. And we didn't do that. We made statements like we'll defend the vote. Defending the vote means we'll defend it by going to courts. We'll defend it legally, the way we have been doing. And over the years, Comrade Secretary General, when you fight dictatorship, when you fight authoritarianism, when you fight tyranny, and we have been fighting tyranny for over 20 years, you learn to do certain things. Number one, you push, you beg a reform, you live to fight another day. We have learned in Zimbabwe that the struggle for democratic change is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So over the years, we've been fighting, chipping away the system. We have one of the best constitutions now. I know Professor Madugu won't agree. A very decent constitution, which we fought for. Many people died for it, but we're very proud that through our actions, we got that constitution. So that's how we have learned to fight dictatorship. You chip at it and live to fight another day. But and this is why I said, we have refused the temptation, the seduction of the easy route to becoming a guerrilla movement or a rebel movement. We have refused, and our late leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, was consistent. Even if things are hard, we hold on to constitutionalism, we hold on to the rule of law. And that's what we have remained like in the past 20 years of our existence as a movement.
You indicated that the rioters would not have been MDC people. Maybe this might help you clarify. These people who gave their evidence here said they were chanting slogans. We want to defend our they were also putting on MDC regalia. It is best that he responds to that. They were also chanting slogans, putting on t-shirts and letters. What do you say about that?
Thank you, Comrade President. I hope I can call you that. We did not, as MDC, sanction or lead any protest on the 1st of August or any time. The last time we had a public procession, it was open. It was on the 11th of July 2018. That people were chanting slogans. I also can do a ZANU-PF slogan. I mean, it's high. So people can do MDC slogan. Yes. People can put on our regalia. Yes. Just like we can also put on ZANU-PF regalia. So to me, Comrade Chair, it means nothing. It means nothing. But the fact of the matter is that we genuinely believed. You might call our belief foolish, but that's what we believed. We believed that we had won this election, as I still do. And there was no way that we were going to stop our coronation, as it were. And if we were to do anything consistent with everything we have done over the years, we'll follow the route of the law. We notify the police.
Would it be absurd to say maybe since this was not sanctioned, it could have been enthusiastic supporters?
Since we are now venturing into speculation, my own belief right now is that I think that people knew the magnitude of the theft. And I think that people knew that with or without the MDC, there will be protests in Zimbabwe. So people had to be killed to create a chilling effect, to make sure that nobody else demonstrates again, because blood would have been lost on the street. So I believe that people actually planned all this thing to the full stop in the same meticulous manner they planned the coup of November 2017.
On the 31st July 2018, you indicated that the results show beyond reasonable doubt. Beyond no reasonable doubt that Chamisa had won the elections through the parallel voter tabulation process, and that the people could actually begin to throw parties since the elections had been won in the manner in which you described. You then proceeded to say that if ZEC announces to the contrary, we will not accept this result. And that what would follow, if that was the result, we would have demonstrations and do petitions. My question is that then what happened? That the demonstrations followed?
Firstly, Commissioner, that is not what I said on the 31st. And there's a video. There's a video on YouTube. What I said on the 31st was that, and if you watch the whole thing, the import of my press address was to force and compel ZEC to timelessly announce the results. Yes. In the background of 2008, where they'd taken 6 weeks before they'd announced the results. So I say, we want ZEC to announce the results. But from evidence that we have collected, Nelson Chamisa is won. So we are asking ZEC to announce the results. Can you announce the results? That's what I said on the... I did not make any reference to demonstrations. I did not make any reference to parties and so forth. I did not. I did not do that.
Mr. Tendai Biti, as the mzee from Tanzania, mzee, by the way, the Swahili word referring to an old man, but usually said in a respectful context.
I'm respecting you, mzee.
Thank you so much. I would like to join hands with Chief Manyoku in thanking you immensely only for your very insightful and instructive submission. I have only one small question for you. What advice do you wish to give to the government, to the political parties, and to the people of the country regarding the political future of this country?
Thank you. It's a question of wisdom. Thank you for that. I think that our country has been arrested by years and years of turmoil, years and years of intolerance, years and years of unnecessary division. People can have political differences. People can belong to different political parties. That's the natural order of things. But you cannot have the situation that exists in Zimbabwe, where having a different opinion is a crime. Having a different viewpoint is a crime. And part of the challenge with the Zimbabwean crisis is that we do have a political crisis. And we've had a political crisis for years. But our political crisis tends to be so overbearing. It tends to affect every walk of our life. So right now we've got a serious economic meltdown in our country. We can't get cash from our banks. The government has just increased taxes through the budget announced last week. 95% of our people are unemployed. 79% of our people are living in extreme poverty. I've been to countries, I've just come from Uganda, I spent a whole week in Uganda. There's a political problem there, a big political problem in Uganda. But the political problem does not affect people in their ordinary day-to-day living. There's fuel in the shops of Uganda. The prices of goods are so cheap. I went to the market to buy clothes, traditional clothes. I could have bought the whole market. Their shops are full of goods. There's electricity, there's water. The Zimbabwean crisis is unique in that it's all embracing, it's overwhelming. It follows the citizen in every aspect of his life. It's suffocating, it's choking. So, in my view, Comrade Mzee, I think that we need to have serious dialogue as a people. We need to finish the work that was started by President Beki, completed by President Motland. And this dialogue should focus on those things that structurally and permanently divide us. Elections permanently divide us. How do we should have a discussion around elections. We should listen to what everyone is saying, including even the SADC and African reports, so that elections are not a cause of division. Let's have a discussion on that. Because since 1980, Comrade Mzee, we have had a situation where every election time is a season of madness, of intolerance, of exclusion. So let's have discussions around that so that we have permanent reform that stops the reproduction of this continuous cycle of conflict and struggle for legitimacy. Right now, there's a struggle for legitimacy. We don't accept that president, we don't accept the result of July 2018, and so far as it affects the presidential vote. So we are going to waste the next 5 years quarreling over that. And which investor will put money in Zimbabwe? Which investor will put money in Zimbabwe? Which foreign country will provide overseas development assistance? So let's deal with the question of legitimacy. Let's deal with the question of reforms, Comrade Chair. We need, and Dr. Madugu will agree with me, let's revisit the Constitution and see what aspects need to be dealt with. Let's revisit our legal regime and see which laws need to be dealt with. There are obvious ones like POSA, like IPA. Let's harmonize our laws to the new constitution. Let's have reforms that deal with state capture in this country. Every institution now is basically captured. Let's have reforms, Comrade Chair, that deal with the issue of the militarization, the rise of the securocratic state. How do we get our soldiers back to the barracks? How do we get politics leading the gun as it should be? Let's discuss the issues of reforms around the media. 38 years after independence, it is a crime, Comrade Mzee, that we still have one broadcasting house, Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, which has just blocked my evidence, I'm being told. 30 years after independence, we basically have one newspaper. I know in Tanzania, just Swahili newspapers alone, you've got 8 newspapers. never mind English. In Da alone, never mind the islands. And you're an African country. So let's deal with all these issues. Let's deal, Comrade Chair, with the key issue of nation building. We are a country, but we are not a nation. We are a country, but we are not a nation. How do we restore the social contracts? How do we rebuild the social fabric of Zimbabwe? How do I suspect we need a program of national healing. I suspect the levels of intolerance in this country, Comrade Mzee, we are as close to Rwanda in 1994 as we can ever be. And that's a disaster. Because 4 months later, in April of 1994, 1 million people were killed. That's how battered this society is. So we need national reconciliation. We need a program of transitional justice. Because all of us are carrying pain. We've been victims of violence, we've been tortured, we've been brutalized physically. They've been tortured through economic mismanagement. The Ministry of Finance appointed the Commission of Enquiry into pensions, led by a retired judge, Justice Smith. It came to the conclusion that $5.68 billion worth of pension monies were lost because of the hyperinflationary era. Now we are losing money again through the introduction of the economy. How do we move the economy forward? How do we move the economy forward? Because the economy has become a feature of the disempowerment of the ordinary person. Lastly, the agenda of international re-engagement. So if our friends go to China, we'll go to Brussels. Now at least they can go to London. But it doesn't make sense. Let's have a common front with our engagement with the United States of America, with London, with Brussels, with Beijing, with New Delhi. We don't have that common front. So I would say 5 key issues on elections. Let's have discussions on the reform agenda. Let's have a discussion on nation building, national healing, restoration of the social contract. Let's have a discussion on the economy. Let's have a discussion on reintegration. How do we end Zimbabwe's isolation? Once we agree on this, we then discuss on the implementation mechanism. How do we implement the agreement? I flew using Rwanda Airlines. It used to have 2 airlines. Now it is Airbus A380, Boeing 777, and we've got old aircraft that were bought in 1976. It's not good enough, Comrade Chair. So we need dialogue to move the country.
Thank you, Mr. Biti. A very hard act to follow. But I wish to also reiterate what the Chief has said, that we as the Commission see our mandate as getting to the truth of what happened. We have to rely on the evidence we get, though, so we are trying to get as much evidence as possible. Informed decision. And thank you for all the information you have. What I wanted to ask you, though, about in relation to our terms of reference, because I think that's where we have to start and then move on to the future, is with respect to the armed forces and the police. I hope if you've been following the proceedings, you would have seen that we're very directly scrutinized their actions and every step that was.
Firstly, there's no third force in the MDC. It's a very we are a very constitutional party in terms of what we do, and we have stuck to one script. An election is stolen from